Assalamu alaikum, Maulana. If you can hold on for just for a minute, I will put you on the YouTube.
Sure, sure. Let me know when you're ready. No problem.
Bismillah, Maulana. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وهو خير الناصر ومعين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First of all, before we begin, let me express to you my tabrik and my congratulations to all of you on the day of the 5th of Rajab, which is the birthday of Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Just a few points about our 10th Imam. Inshallah, we'll begin our third session on this series after that. One of the most beautiful things about the 10th Imam is that, and I say this, whenever his shahadat or his wilada comes about, that is that he comprises of those last four Imams that were known as the young Imams. As you know, his father, Imam Jawad alayhi salam, was younger than 10. He himself was younger than 10, some say 8. And of course, as you know, the youngest of all the Imams was our living Imam, Imam Hujjah, who was, of course, 5 years old when he was made an Imam. Now, this served two purposes. Number one is that it was a true test for the Shi'as. It's one thing to believe in a 25-year-old young man. It's one thing to believe in a 40-year-old man. It's one thing to believe, somebody in their, in their adulthood. It's one thing where the Imam of your time is telling you that my successor after me, meaning the Imam for you after me, is someone who is 9 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old. That's a true test of faith. And that's why you see that there are some deviant groups that were born around the time of Imam Rada alayhi salam, only because Imam Rada wasn't until his late 40s that he had Imam Jawad as a son. So before that, many people doubted the imamat of our 8th Imam, only because he said, look, if you were a true Imam, you would have had a successor by now. So this was a test for the Shi'as, number one. Number two is that it was a revival of some of the merits of the Ahlebaith. What I mean by that is, and very quickly, I don't want to take up too much of your time. What I mean by that is that the enemies of Islam, the Bani Abbasid during those days, they took it upon themselves to see this as a golden opportunity to truly and really destroy this movement of the Ahlebaith. Just degrade it, disrespect it, belittle it. And so one thing that both Imam Hadi and his father, Imam Jawad, faced was that they would be set up with debates. And that, the Abbasid Khalifa at that time would send, the highest ranked theologian or philosopher or academic, and they would set up a public debate between, let's say, for example, this philosopher and this 9-year-old child, this 8-year-old child, this 7-year-old child. All in an attempt to show the public that this whole circus of the Ahlul Bayt is nothing but a circus. And of course, as many of you know, one famous name in history is Yahya ibn Aktham. Yahya ibn Aktham was a learned man, but he was unfortunately one who tasted defeat at the hand of Imam Jawad. And the same Yahya was then brought in front of Imam Hadi and destroyed at a debate on fiqh, on philosophy, on the Quran. And so what these two imams did, and Imam Hadi especially, was revive the beauty and the ilm and the knowledge of the Ahlebaith. One hadith from our 10th imam, and then we'll move on. And that is that he says that faith lies in the heart, is strengthened by deeds, and is displayed by the tongue. Right? It's such a beautiful, beautiful discussion that faith is not just an internal reality. A lot of us, we know people, we ourselves might be afflicted by this disease that, look, as long as I am, I have the faith, as long as it's not inside of my heart, how I live my life, what I listen to, where I go, what I eat, all those things are not important. Right? It's in my heart. I believe, right? So I don't need to follow this organized religion concept. I can pray how I want to pray. I can dress modestly. I don't have to wear a hijab, for example. I donate to this building and that cause. I don't need to give khums, right? And what we don't realize is that faith is an all-encompassing reality of mind, body, and soul. And this one hadith, that faith is inside the heart, strengthened by a'mal, and then displayed by the tongue, shows, of course, this all-encompassing package of faith and spirituality. Everything we do on the external affects everything on the internal. And that is just a reality that both the Western society accepts, and of course, Islam from day number one has always said, amanu wa amilu salih, right? Faith and good deeds. Faith and good deeds go hand in hand, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq to tread the path of Imam Hadi alayhi salam. We ask Allah to give our youngsters and our youth this inspiration, this push, this motivation to really, truly, discover the inner light inside of them, and not simply use the excuse that I'm still young, but really, adopt the sunnah of our 10th imam and, make their way towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah. May Allah bless all of you on this Adeem day and Adeem celebration, inshallah. Now, on to our discussion. As many of you know, we have been talking now for the past 3 weeks on the discussion of the illuminated heart. Let me go ahead and share my screen, inshallah, and then we will begin. We are now on session number 3, and up until now, the concept and the idea has been that the deen of Islam is not an individualistic deen. Its emphasis has always been on the communal, on the social. And in this day and age of this pandemic, in this era now where we've kind of been isolated from everybody else, separated apart, we're stuck to virtual worlds now. And there are many people who have lost that that connection with the community. There are people who would look forward to the events. And so it's important that we, at this point now, reach out to those people. There are people who have, mental health issues, anxiety, stress, and this loneliness, this isolation, the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen, what does a post-pandemic world look like? Reach out to them. There are people who, God forbid, are abused at home, and now their abuser is home with them 24/7. That's difficult. Our elders, our respective elders, who really rely heavily on the center, once a week, once every 2 weeks to come and break some bread and spend 2 hours, and that was their social fix. As I mentioned in the first lecture, there were some elders I speak to would tell me that, Maulana, our Shabbat Jummah programs, our Thursday night programs was my anxiety medication, was my depression pill, right? I look forward to Thursday nights every single week, and as I mentioned before, Toronto has brutal winters, right? Very tough snow, very cold, very icy, but these elders would bear all of that and would hop in their car, and they would, take on the elements and end up being there on a Thursday night for a little bit of dua kumel, a little bit of a speech, and of course some tea and some tabarruk. So the point of this entire series was selflessness, empathy with others, being there during someone else's darkness, helping others through their difficulty, reaching out to those that you know are in need. And for the past couple of weeks now, we've talked about everything from, examples last week of some events of the lives of the Ahlebaith, Imam Mujtaba alayhi salam during Ittikaf, Imam Sadiq during Tawaf, the Prophet's hadith, all that was discussed last week. Now we move on to this session. And after this session, of course, we have one more session and then that's it. So I do want to talk a little bit about the approach. So now we are going to be individuals who sit there and say, fine, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reach out to people I know need me. Because remember, I think the culture now has changed. We think 1,000 times before we call somebody to make sure they're okay. Should I? Shouldn't I? Am I that close to them? What if it's weird? What if they ghost me, Milana? Well, it would kill me if I knew they read my message, they didn't get back to me, right? And so the moment we have a good intention, Shaitan comes in, infiltrates that intention, and begins now to play with it. And before we know it, we say, you know what? Forget it. I'll pray for them, inshallah, right? So we put all that aside, and we actually reach out to somebody randomly that we haven't before, knowing full well that they are going through a lot of problems. What is the approach? Before that, however, let's look at the idea of the connection between helping others and worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay? This hadith for me, changing. I come across words in my research either through Allah directly or through the Ahlebaith or some verse of the Quran that resonate. They stick with me. I put them in my notes in my phone. I revisit them every so often. I include them in my lectures. I want to share that experience with my listeners and with my audience, but I first want to absorb it as well. This is a hadith that is called Hadith Qudsi. A Hadith Qudsi is a hadith that is narrated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning they are the words of Allah, but they are not in the Quran. Okay? So they usually start off by saying, Qala Allah. This is a portion of a longer hadith, but what I really want to focus on is a certain portion of it. Okay? Let's go through this a little bit. Okay? It says, فَمَنْ قَصَدَنِي عَرَفَنِي وَمَنْ عَرَفَنِي أَرَادَنِي وَمَنْ أَرَادَنِي طلبني ومن طلبني وجدني ومن وجدني خدمني ومن خدمني ذكرني ومن ذكرني ذكرته برحمتي. Okay? Translation is what? The one who intends to move towards me. Now remember, Allah is saying this. The me here, capital M, is of course Allah himself. He says he's talking now. He's talking. These are his words, first person. The one who intends to move towards me knows me. Okay? The one who knows me is inclined towards me. فَمَنْ قَصَدَنِي. Qasd, for lack of a better word, is intent, is purpose, is to move towards. Right? We say qasd al-raja sometimes when it comes to niyat of certain amal, with the hopes and the intention of the fact that this will be accepted. Okay? Sometimes in Farsi, qas kardam. I had this intention. I made this niyat, this intention. So here Allah is saying, for the one now who has intended to move towards me. You wake up one day, you have that spark, you say, I'm done with living my satanic life. I now want to move towards Allah. So let me go ahead, unfold my prayer mat, go ahead and do wudu, pick up the Quran after many, many months, let's say, for example, and now my intention is to move towards Allah. Allah says the one who does that, arafani, he has ma'arifat of me. He knows me. If he didn't know me, he wouldn't intend to move towards me. Okay? وَمَنْ عَرَفَنِي أَرَادَنِي. The one who knows me, now who does what? He is inclined towards me. Right? أَرَادَنِي. The one who is now inclined towards me. Irada or irade, let's say they say in Farsi. Irada is also used in Urdu. Irade in Farsi. It means the exact same thing. Even in the Quran, right? وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ. Allah says we desire. Nuridu from irada, we desire, right? All that means is that if you have, a certain irada towards something, you are inclined towards it. You're moving towards it. Allah is murid, one of his names. He intends something. He moves towards something. He desires something, right? The one who knows me that is inclined towards me. وَمَنْ أَرَادَنِي طَلَبَنِي. This is beautiful words, guys. The one who is inclined towards me searches for me. Searches for me. Sometimes we refer to Hausa students as what? As a talebe, right? As a talibul ilm, the one who searches for knowledge. A talib is one who searches. Allah says, وَمَنْ أَرَادَنِي طَلَبَنِي. The one now who is inclined towards me searches for me. Searches for me. وَمَنْ طَلَبَنِي وَجَدَنِي. Allahu Akbar. The one who searches for me finds me, he says. Feel the love of Allah in this hadith. Feel the love of Allah. He doesn't say, he keeps searching and searching and searching. No, the moment that they search for me, they find me. Meaning what? I'm very close. I'm not at the top of the Himalayan mountains, or am I deep inside, let's say, the crevice or the core of the earth? No. Hablun warid. I'm closer than hablun warid, your jugular vein. I haven't gone anywhere. The moment you begin to search for me, you'll find me. وَمَنْ وَجَدَنِي خَدَمَنِي. This is where I have it bolded there in front of you, and the font size goes a little bit higher in the English translation. The one who finds me now serves me. Serves me. Does what? Khadamani is a khadim towards me. Does the khidmat of me. وَمَنْ خَدَمَنِي ذَكَرَنِي. The one who serves me remembers me. وَمَنْ ذَكَرَنِي ذَكَرْتُهُ بِرَحْمَتِي. Allahu Akbar. The one who remembers me, I will remember them with my mercy. All from a moment of qasd, from a moment that you wake up and say, you know what? I want to move towards Allah. And you get through the chain, you search for him, you find him, you serve him, remember. Right? What does Allah mean by khidmat? He serves me. Is it possible that Allah says, just serve me alone, that's it? Doesn't matter how you are with anybody else? No. Serving Allah sometimes requires, sometimes, in the domain of Allah, he shares certain things with us. Meaning what? That even when it comes to service, which should only be for him. I mean, if there's any khidmat, any service to be done in this universe, it's for Allah. But then he says, serve your parents. Serve your brothers, serve your spouse. When I say serve, I don't mean like a maid. I mean, help them reach their goal, pull them out of their darkness, be there for them during their difficulties, right? There's haqqullah, there's haqqun nas. I've said it 1,000 times. There are rights Allah has over us. There are rights that others have over us. Service towards Allah. Sometimes there are acts of worship that we do towards Allah when he says, look, I'm not going to accept it until and unless you fix it with this person. For example, right? The whole idea of forgiveness. There are moments now where Allah says, look, you're asking me to forgive you for a sin. That's fine. I appreciate that. But until you go and get that person's forgiveness, I won't be able to give you my forgiveness, right? So acts of worship, service in general is not just about him and him alone. It is a package deal. Amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi anil munkar. Enjoining the good, promoting the good, and forbidding the evil or moving away from the evil is this whole idea that the deen of Islam is a communal deen. Okay, so I found this to be a very beautiful hadith, and one that inshallah all of you will, all of us, myself included, will benefit from. The other one I found to be very good was this one. Again, quite wordy, I'm sorry, but this one I thought was good, and I'll tell you why it's good in a moment after I go through it. Imam Ali in Mustadrak has a very, this is the hadith he has. He says that there are two groups of brothers, and usually when they say ikhwan inside of the hadith, they mean believers. Okay, let's not be stuck on gender here, right? We're talking about a brother in faith, is a fellow believer in faith. Okay, I mean, this hadith is not just for males, right? I mean, let's not be stuck on the pronouns here and all that. There's an overall message here. There are two groups of brothers, the real ones and the superficial ones. Okay? He says the real ones are like your hands, your wings, your relatives, or your property. Once you find such brothers, you can help them. Give them from what you own. Be friendly with their friends and be the enemy of their enemies. Hide their secrets, cover up their faults, and reveal their good points. Understand that they are very rare. This whole concept I've spoken about, I think, in Zainabiyya as well. The whole idea of circle of influence and friendship, and how if you have one or two really, truly good friends that resemble what Imam Ali is talking about, then you have struck gold. It's a rarity. Forget numbers, forget followers and subscribers. I'm talking about friendship at the soul level, a brotherhood at the soul level, a sisterhood at the soul level. That's rare. 1, 2 is all you need. In a world that measures things through quantity, here Imam Ali is saying qualify your brothers and sisters. Don't just quantify them. But what about the superficial ones? They also have a role. However, he says, use your superficial brothers. Do not stop your friendship and your associations with them. However, do not expect any more than this from them. We get so upset, we get so hurt, we get so devastated, we get so let down, so disappointed over people. And sometimes, yes, sometimes we think there are our real friends, and sometimes they turn out to be our superficial ones. I mean, I've been through my fair share of struggles in my life. I'm sure all of you have well. And I feel like every time I went through a hardship or a struggle and I hit rock bottom, or I was faced with an immense mountain to climb, that became for me a filter to find out who is a true brother of mine in my life and who is just a superficial one. And sometimes I was pleasantly surprised and blown away by the fact that I never thought me and him were this close, and we ended up being closer. At the same time, I was hurt and heartbroken. While I was expecting who I thought to be my real brothers show up, they actually end up being superficial. And that's okay. That's fine. It's bitter. It doesn't taste good, but it's better that you realize that, sooner rather than later. Imam Ali says, don't cut them off, but don't expect anything more than that. When they treat you kindly and talk nicely with you, respond with gentle treatment and nice words. Be okay with them. But if you're looking for them to pull you out of the darkness, no, those are the real ones. Those are the true ones. And I feel like, when it comes to the ratio, we have a lot of superficial brothers. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. We have people who are surface level friends of ours. Have a good time. Let's grab a coffee. How's it going? Yeah. Did you watch the game? Blah, blah, blah. Great. But the real ones that I can really, truly let into my world, it's a rarity. It's a rarity, right? So now can you imagine somebody sitting in their own darkness and they get a phone call, they get approached by somebody that they thought didn't even think about them, let alone try to help them. Sitting there now, as I said, sometimes simply just sit with them in their darkness. Okay? I'm sure that right now, if you let your mind free, you can think about a number of people that in your phone book, in your contacts, that you could probably reach out and say, look, just checking in, everything okay? I heard things aren't well. If things aren't open in Michigan, let's grab a drive-through coffee. Let's park beside each other. You roll your window down, I'll roll mine down, and let's enjoy a coffee together. Right? Yeah. So, I found this hadith again to be very, very beautiful. Now, what about the approach? Okay. Now I tell myself, okay, Sayyid, remember last week we talked about the fact that, sometimes I have had really bad experiences. When I tried to help somebody out, they took it the wrong way. They told me to mind my own business. They told me off. It turned out to be horrible. I left a bad taste in my mouth. I swore to myself I would never get involved in anyone's problems again. And again, I'm not asking you to come in and hold family meetings and it's okay, I can do this, don't worry. No. I'm asking all of you and myself to simply reach out. open the door a crack, half an inch. If it remains half an inch, fine, no problem. But you've done your level best. But sometimes we do have, I know I have. I try to swoop in and save the day, and it turns out that, in trying to like, bring two people together, the two of them now unite in their enmity against me. So here I am now trying to bring these two together now. In turn, now I've met my purpose. They're together now. They're back together, but all under the umbrella of now, destroying me and dragging me through the mud. Happens too many times. Okay. So will I think twice? Yeah, of course I will. And Shaitan will come in and add his masala and his spices and add a little bit of, right? The approach maybe I had wasn't correct. What should the approach be? A listen first approach. A listen first approach. Mashallah, we have many, many people in our families, in our communities, who have every ounce of our life figured out. Unsolicited advice comes from every corner of them. They all have me figured out. Oh, if only you lost 10 pounds, you would be this. If only you came to the center more, you'd do this. If only you did this. If you wore this clothing, if you had 2 more kids, everything will be done. If you got married, everything would be, right? Sometimes just a simple hello, auntie, hello, uncle, how are you? Boom, advice. Boom, and like they don't even know my last name, and yet they're sitting there telling me. Or if I approach somebody who, let's say, I think is in darkness, and I swoop in with my cape on, okay, and I sit there and I tell myself, I know exactly what they need. I have the solution for them. And you come in, and without even hearing a word from them, you're like, look, I know you very well. I know what's going on. Trust me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will work. Work for me, work for you. Don't worry. All this and do this, start attend a course, go back to school, start your own business, tell your spouse that you need this, you need, blah, blah, blah. Right? And sometimes for a person who's drowning in their own darkness, the last thing that they want to hear is someone to walk in and pretend like they know exactly what's going on. That actually infuriates some people, right? That's a solution first approach. It's very difficult to come up with the solution for them if you don't hear them. And first of all, no one's asking anyone to come up with a solution. Sometimes you don't have that solution. I get phone calls from people who are dealing with internal situations inside of their mind and their brain, or that their kids are dealing with, that is way beyond anything I've ever learned. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a psychiatrist. There are people who call me and say, I've become possessed. There are people who call me and say, I hear voices in my head. There are people who are calling me and saying that Shaitan now has come and taken over my body, right? So I end up hurting myself, punching myself in the face. I don't want to do that. What can I do, Milana? I'm like, whoa, no, I don't pretend like I have a solution. Right away, I say the expert. Find a counselor in your area, in your city, and go. Right? Yes, I can lend you my ears. I can perhaps just be a sounding board, but I've learned the hard way not to pretend like you have the solution, because sometimes a solution is simply being a sounding board. Right? Especially when it comes to husband and wife. I mean, it's not my topic. I talked about this already in my last series with all of you, in the Successful Family series. I talked about the power of listening, if all of you remember. In trying to develop the second principle, which was humility, if you remember that slide, the first thing was to listen. Listening to somebody else with the proper principles that we'll go through in a moment actually humbles you as a person who's trying to come in and save the day. But a lot of times when a wife, let's say, for example, expresses her pain to her husband, something somebody said, it could be from his family, his mother, his sister, his first cousin, his sibling, his brother, right? Said this. I didn't like the way that he said this, or she had this tone in her voice. all these things, and she comes to you, sort of venting and getting out her frustration. She's not looking for you to call the phone up or have a family meeting and say, guys, from now on, don't address my wife. That's the last thing she wants you to do. But men are all about, okay, I got this. Don't worry, I'll handle it. She's like, I don't want you to handle it. You're just going to make it worse. Just listen to me. Create a safe zone for me. So if there are moments that your family does something that upsets me, I can talk to you about it. I don't want to talk to my family about it. I want to talk to you about your family, just like I want you to sit there and tell me those moments that my family will frustrate you, because it's bound to happen. Every family has a little bit of crazy inside of it, right? Even yours, especially mine, right? So, when I talk about the listen first approach, that's what I mean. I said this before, I'll say it again. People call me and it'll be a 45-minute conversation. And I would have said maybe 4 words to them. And by the end of the conversation, they'll thank me, they feel 1,000 times better, and I haven't said a single word, not one word. And literally now, as they're talking out loud, they can hear themselves, they're talking themselves out of their own darkness. That's what I mean by a listen first approach. Now, if there is a solution and you have a solution, it's in your expertise. If someone says, is there something I can recite to bring about a calmness of the heart? Yeah, I'll tell you what to recite. Is there a dua that you find to be especially powerful, Mona? For sure. But if you're asking me to treat your schizophrenia or treat your bipolar disorder or treat your mental health illness, I can't do it. It's not who I am. It's not my expertise. I can listen, right? I can perhaps give you another avenue, but I can't treat that. Sometimes us walking in and giving advice to everybody we see, because we think, oh, I'm close to them, it's okay, they know I'm coming from a good place, it's irritating after a while, right? You don't have everything figured out, especially if that person themselves is a wreck in their house and in their family and their life. Like, why don't you give yourself some advice first, my dear and my brother, before you come and tell me how to run my life, right? So a listen first approach is vital, okay? Principles of listening, okay? Let's understand how to be proper listeners. We are not good listeners. Overall in general, we cut people off. We think we have it figured out. We're distracted listeners, looking over here, looking over there, looking at our phone. We don't know what to say sometimes. We are awkward. We change the subject. We do all these things. And we have to learn how to be good, especially as men. Especially as men, we need to be better listeners. How do we do that? Just a few points. Number 1, allow others the courtesy of silence while they are speaking. Okay, my pet peeve is when I'm cut off. Okay, and there are moments that I catch myself cutting somebody else off. Okay, like I remember, this was a matter of, I think, 2 months ago. Okay, I was talking to somebody on the phone, and you could tell that I kept cutting the person off, like, because I knew exactly where they were going, so I wanted to get there faster. Okay, it's not a good trait. It's something I need to work on. Okay, and the person that caught that was my wife. She said, "Look, people call you all the time. You have to learn to stop cutting them off. If they say things 10 times, 15 times again, so be it. Let them say it. It helps them, right? How would you like it if I cut you off, right? So the first thing is give them the courtesy of silence, okay? Like I said, just sit in the darkness with them. No one's asking you to, go into a phone booth now and Clark Kent and save the day. No. You're not the Dark Knight. I'm not Iron Man. Forget all that. Just sit there and say, look, I don't have any answers for you. I have no idea how to fix your problem, but I just want to share the air with you right now. I want to breathe in the same air you're breathing in right now. If that's okay, yeah, sure it is. So sometimes you'll talk about everything but the actual problem, and that's very, very therapeutic sometimes. For me, sometimes when I am going through my rough days, and I have a lot of rough days, I do. Sometimes it's just a matter of having a conversation with somebody about the Raptors, about, Tom Brady being the greatest football player of all time, about how he beat Mahomes. I couldn't believe it. All these things. Right? And that conversation has nothing to do with my internal kingdom, but it really kind of helps. So first thing is courtesy of listening. Number 2, be present. Oh, nowadays, these buzzwords, mindfulness, right? Being present in the moments, right? All these things are Islamic concepts. Be present and curious rather than thinking of how to respond. So there are some people who either are speaking out loud or they're talking to themselves in terms of the next thing to say. Okay? And you could tell all they're doing, I'm talking to you. I could see that you're formulating your next thought. Baba, empty your mind out. Give me your ears. Okay? Like you said your piece. Now listen to my piece. Okay? Let them feel like this person is listening. How can you do that? Lock eyes if the person is mahram to you. Be present. Nothing else matters. Turn your book over. Turn your phone over. Turn the television off. Face them. Do 1,000 other things. Okay? Head movements. Okay, yes. Organic, natural. Right? Let them finish. Let them know that you are absorbed in what they're saying. Okay? Then and only then will they begin to do what? They'll begin now to enter that safe zone. What you want to create with people now in their darkness is a comfort zone. I'm comfortable with you. I'm safe around you. I can say how I want to say. Sometimes I tell you, and again, this is not a marriage therapy session, but, anyways, Malana, she comes home and, she has a rough day and, somebody else upset her and she lashes out on me. And I have no idea what I did. I don't deserve it. And I'm tired of it. And I told her one more time to lash out and I'm done. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Like and this may sound odd to all of you, if your spouse is seeing you sometimes as a punching bag, okay? Like sometimes, there was a friend of mine actually in high school. He's a kickboxer, okay? And he converted his entire gym to a little training facility. He had a punching bag, a speed bag, he had an area for shadow boxing, area for skipping. And I remember one time I came to his place to pick him up, or we were going out for dinner, and I could hear him in his garage. Door was closed, just hitting the bag. I can hear him breathing up with every pounding of the glove against the bag. I walk in, he's drenched in sweat, and he looks like a raging bull. I'm like, oh, what? Everything okay? And like, I've had a horrible day. I just. I said, oh. I said, okay. He goes, yeah. He goes, sometimes there's nothing more freeing than for me to take out my frustration on this bag, because I know that this bag is here, and I know this bag can take it. It's not going to fly off the thing. It's not going to bust open. I'm not that strong. Sometimes I think that we have to understand that we have to be there like that for each other to a certain degree now, especially spouses. Okay? Let yourself be her punching bag. Because I'll tell you, on those moments where somebody else now makes her happy, she'll come home and show you the happiness. So those days where someone else upsets her and she can't say a word to that person, let her come home and lash out to you. You just know full well that this is not me. This is me now taking the punches, and she's getting her frustration now. In the process now, you're creating a beautiful, safe comfort zone. You could be how you wish with me. You can let your guard down. It's okay. I'll handle it. Number 1, I can take the shots. Number 3, I'm not going to be upset at you. She'll love you for it. He'll love you for it. Okay, that's what I mean by being present. It's creating a safe zone for the person, allowing them the right to say whatever they can, right? Without judgment, without you being bored, without you looking at your clock, without you checking your phone, right? Be present. Ask questions that show them, you know what, they're actually retaining what I'm saying. Number 3, fully engage, free of distractions. I think what's worse than being cut off is the person looking around everywhere, but at you. Like imagine that, you're talking and this person's like, oh yeah, okay, yes, okay, yes, no, yeah, I hear you, yeah. Or they're not so. I mean, this is so blatant, but they try to be subtle, right? Oh, really, yeah, no, yeah, no, I hear you. Really. Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay, that's it. You've lost them. And the moment you lose them, it's very tough to come back. Fully engaged. The Prophet would turn his body towards people who would talk to him. Nothing in the peripheral. It's not like he's looking this way, but he's talking to them. No. Straight on. To show respect, right? Number 4, without judgments. Oh. Especially our South Asian community. I'm sorry. I love you guys. I'm a typical Pakistani kid, man, born and raised, immigrant parents, this and that. I belong to a huge family, a huge community, blah, blah, blah. And we're judgmental people because we think we have everyone's problems figured out. This person is miserable because they're 40 pounds overweight. This person is miserable because she only has 1 kid. This person is miserable because, she refuses to live with her in-laws, right? This guy is judgmental, right? And that judgment sometimes is very, very visible when someone is, right? You're talking, and they could sense them, judging you as a horrible parent, horrible spouse, a horrible believer, this and that, blah, 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 right? Or sometimes, we think that because somebody has money, right? They're a very affluent family. They do very well, right? And they're telling you all about their problems, and you're sitting there saying, oh yeah, okay, you must have a lot of problems, yeah, right? How's that swimming pool in your backyard, and how's your 8,000 square foot house, and blah, blah, blah. And as if to say that, if you're affluent, all the issues in this world that afflict you won't even touch them, actually bypass them. No, right? So right away now, they're coming at you, trying to create a safe zone, and all you have, or all I have is judgment upon judgment upon judgment. Right? I know people who have nothing to do with God. They go through the motions. It's a very, it's an inherited religion that they have from their mom and their dad, and they will sit there and tell me, "Oh, I don't know why I feel very uneasy. I don't have that sense of faith, and I wish I did." And I could very easily say, "Yeah, well, your problem is faith. I mean, if you had better faith, if you're praying a lot, if you covered yourself up, if you didn't post all those Instagram pictures, maybe you would have." That judgment is not needed when you have a listen first approach. There's sometimes nothing more fulfilling than to feel visible to the person that you're talking to. Visible. There's nothing worse than feeling invisible. Think about, think about a lot of us growing up, right? Siblings. If any of you now ever went through a moment when you were younger where you were shushed, you were quieted, your opinions never mattered, you were always looked at as someone that, just be quiet, don't sit there, right? Especially in our culture, right? If any youngster would want to chime in on a conversation, just, and after a number of times of being shushed and shushed and shushed, you feel invisible inside of your own home. And that's traumatic. It's devastating. And that plays with your self-confidence. So later on in life now, it'll start to rear its ugly head through other means, right? You don't have confidence in your marriage, in your parenting, in your job, in yourself, in your worship. All of it goes tumbling down, all because you were invisible as a child, right? When you listen without judgment, you're telling them that, look, there's no judgment here. What you're going through is real. You could be $1 million family, right? You could be somebody who has an amazing spouse and 5 beautiful kids, and I would switch my life with you. It doesn't mean that what you're going through is anything less. The judgment has to be a little bit has to stop. Okay. Where's my time check? 7:45. Okay. And so, that's really what I wanted to cover. And then there's this fifth one is that don't pretend like you have all the answers. Number 5. Okay. If they're saying, what do I do? Just say, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what to do. For me, this worked. For me, I don't know, but it's not a cookie cutter solution. There are people who walk in strong, man. Like, I know exactly what to do. Do this. That's it for sure. This worked for me. Go for ziyarah. It's not always going to be like that. Okay. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq has a beautiful hadith. The one who pretends to have all the answers to every question asked of them is majnoon, he says. Is there's something wrong up there. All of you have heard the hadith about the beauty and the grace behind the phrase "I don't know," and that's especially for people like me in this path, in this field. We people come to us looking for an answer, and sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know. Let me get back to you. Let me figure it out. This is a little bit beyond. Maybe you can consult someone that's a little bit senior. I don't know if they have experience. Right. I think what I have found in my own personal experience, sometimes I'm talking to people and, it's nice to see they're confident in their answers, but it's like, okay, if this doesn't work, then where do I go? Right. So, you have to be careful when you present an answer that it's either this or it's nothing. No, look, this may or may not work, but this is what happened, with us. For example, like my wife and I, sometimes, we reached out to parents in our communities who have raised excellent kids who are now in their 20s and 30s. And as my kids are getting older, we call them up and say, look, Uncle, Auntie, can you just tell us, like, what did you do when your kids were 8, were 9, or, just entering the teenage years? Were there certain things? And, the answers are so beautiful. Honestly, I said we didn't do, we did this. I don't know, at least for my son, this worked. It could be different for, right? That's a very humbling approach. As opposed to, I got you all figured out. I know exactly what you need to do. This is all it. Trust me on this one. Follow me to a T. I got you. And now you give that person a little bit of hope based on nothing, by the way. You're not an expert. You're not, nothing, right? Because we're quick to diagnose people, right? I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I'll say, oh no, this person has anxiety. No, that sounds like it's something to do with your intestines. No, from what? From WebMD? I don't understand. From what? From Grey's Anatomy? Like, where exactly are you getting this from? Like, so there are too many people like that, and there aren't enough people who simply say, I don't have the answers, but if you want, we can travel together towards the answer. Keep it humble. Keep it humble, right? Sometimes a solution first approach is obnoxious and it's detrimental. It actually, it goes against the actual purpose you're trying to meet, right? It's counterproductive, as they say. Okay, so let's stop there at 7:50. I want to leave 10 minutes, inshallah, for any questions. We will stop my share there, inshallah, and then open up the floor for any questions, inshallah. If you have any questions, by all means, bismillah. I think that Sadiq had left his phone or a phone number in there if you guys want to be anonymous. Otherwise, you guys can go ahead and you can leave a question in the chat, inshallah. Be more than happy to address it if I can. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know. We have one more session next Wednesday as our last session for February on this topic, where next week I'll talk about the connection between helping somebody and mental health, inshallah.
Thank you so much, Sayyid. I haven't had any questions yet. One question.
I can't hear you, Sadiq. I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
No, it's very, very low. Is it me or is it you?
I'm not sure.
Okay, go ahead. That's better. Yep.
Okay. So I know one question that I had was, I don't want you to have a session necessarily on backbiting, but sometimes when, you ask somebody about something or you're trying to resolve an issue, it entails them saying things about other people. And sometimes it's like, if you try to give that person like, hey, maybe it was like this, or maybe you try to defend that person, but then you come off as being like you're just not listening.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that situation?
Yeah, that's a common question, Sadiq, and it's a good one. It's a fine line. Like, I mean, if somebody has hurt you, you've had an exchange, you've had a little bit of a back and forth with somebody, I think what's important is that, especially when you are the one who's approaching somebody who needs help, you want to make sure that they're focused on identifying their emotions and not so much, first of all, not so much the person who's involved. So, when they start to bash that person, oh, he's this and she's this and he's that, then you want to steer them back and trying to now get to that emotional intelligence phase where you identify, were you hurt, were you angry, were you shocked? Let's address that. Let's talk about that, as opposed to those details. So it is important that, obviously the one who's approaching the person who's hurt, they are the one who should be bringing about the calmness and the maturity and a little bit of the logic behind it. The person who's riddled in darkness will be emotional, right? They'll be a mess sometimes, okay? And there'll be an array of emotions there that sometimes they can't identify. It's up to you, up to me as the approacher now, who's going to sit in their darkness and say, look, let's have a focused conversation. Let's not make it to a bashing session about a family or a person, or let's avoid that sin, and let's go ahead and talk about the real issue, which is how you felt about it and how can we move forward from it. It's hard, man. It's hard to do that when sometimes now, if you're somebody who has to share those details, if you're approached and you want to open up to that person, then keep it on a as needed basis. You don't need to talk about the person's character. Talk about the details of what happened, what was said, what was shared, but you don't need to character assassinate or bash or drag anyone's name under the mud or add your own mirchi and masala to it. That, no, straight facts. And then, again, focus on yourself, not so much on them.
Thank you so much. Does anybody else
Thank
have
you. Anybody else, inshallah? We'll give it about a couple minutes, inshallah. Otherwise, we'll end with a dua, inshallah. Yeah, these things are things that all of you have heard, I'm sure, 1,000 times. But during this pandemic, where it's important that we reach out to each other, we try to be there for each other. We do it the right approach, right? Sometimes people have the best of intentions and they end up being the worst of outcomes because the approach was wrong. The approach was just coming in and thinking that you have everything figured out, and it's counterproductive.
Yeah, there was one private question.
Sure.
And actually, I don't know what one of the words means. It says, "Salam, people can come and share their problems with me. I give them my ears only, but some of my friends says that is riyakari." I'm actually not sure what that word is.
That's what, sorry?
Riyakari. I'm not sure what the Urdu word is.
Can you spell it?
We'll put it.
Riyakari.
Riyakari.
Riyakari. Sorry. Yep.
Like showing off?
You'll have to forgive me. My Urdu is not very good.
Okay, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. I don't know. Now you're muted.
It's Riyakari.
Okay. Yeah, but what is the actual question? What's riyakari? Like a person says that people approach me for advice all the time. I give them my 2 ears.
Yep.
Yeah, how is that riyakari?
And then they say, but some of my friends say that is riyakari. That's the question.
No, I don't. I mean, riyakari is somebody who walks around saying, "Oh, I helped that person, I helped this person." If he's doing that, then yeah, I mean, obviously, that's a little bit of the ego thing. I saved the day, I saved that family, I pulled him out of darkness, I pulled her. Like that's obviously, that's not the proper approach either. I mean, if Allah has given you that inspiration to help somebody, thank Allah by being humble about it, and know that Allah is ultimately the one who helps, and He is the one, right? Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. You alone we worship, you alone we ask for help.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
They clarified saying that they say I should tell them their defects rather than listening.
No, I mean it depends on the case by case, right? I mean, if the person is going through an issue right now and they need a soundboard, pick and choose your battles, right? At that moment now, for you to bash them and say, look, these are your 5-6 worst characteristics, is not proper, right? If they need help at that moment, help them through what they're going through. And if later on you're able to help them self-build and self-reflect and self-correct, then so be it. But at that moment now, when they're down and you kick them with a little bit more, oh, by the way, not only are you this, but you're these 4 or 5 things, I think that is, again, counterproductive, right? Pick and choose your battles. That may not be the best time for you to sit there and tell them all the things they do wrong. I mean, they're going through something else right now. Get them through that. When they're in a better place to listen and you've built that sort of rapport with them, there's no takallufat, there's no formalities, then maybe you can go ahead and share that, maybe in the next time you can focus on this inside of yourself. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
Alaikum salam rahmatullah.
You kind of addressed it in the session this time, but I just wanted to restate a question that we didn't get to last time. It was sometimes you get into disagreements with your relative, for sometimes it is quiet on both ends, but then you decide to make things better. Yeah. Your relative replies with coldness and says not to contact them anymore. Okay. In this situation, what is one's responsibility?
Yeah. So thank you for that reminder. I appreciate that, Muhammad. So I obviously, we're not banging on people's doors and saying, please forgive me. You've done your part. Remember, in front of Allah, all you can say is, look, things have gone sour. I have done my best to be cordial. The person's coming to me now and showing some sort of remorse. And if they need time, give them time. Like, because you're okay with it to move on, maybe they're not okay to move on. Like, one thing, inshallah, one day, someday I'll have a whole discussion on, toxicity inside of our lives, toxic people inside of our life, us ourselves being toxic towards others. One thing that we simply, I don't know why it's so hard for us to do, is to respect someone else's boundaries. Okay? We assume that because this is not a big deal for me, it shouldn't be a big deal for them. Because I was able to forgive and forget, they should also forgive and forget. Because I was able to move on and see the bigger picture, I expect them at the same speed, mind you, as I am. If you took, there are people who can turn on a switch, everything is back to normal. There are some people who need to sit there and for 3 or 4 days, process, get through it. Give them their process. Let them exist in their boundaries. Okay, when the time is right, they'll emerge from that boundary, and everything will be all right. So if you have done your best, you've reached out to a relative and they have been cold, then leave it. Your approach and your gesture towards them will be remembered. It's in their head. They know that you reached out and you've done your level best. Okay, again, I talked about this fact in the first week, and I'll reiterate next week as well. Helping somebody to a certain degree is one thing. Becoming zalil and becoming somebody's doormat and becoming just, that's a different situation, right? Even humbleness has its boundaries, has its limits. Okay, I wronged somebody, things aren't right between us, I want to make it right. I reached out to them, they ghosted me, no response, nothing, right? Okay, I'm not going to keep going back, oh please, and beg and plead and touch their feet. And no, after a while, look, I did my best. I said, oh, sorry, and let it kind of take its form, its shape, right? Organically, inshallah. Thanks for the reminder. Anybody else? We have 1 minute left. Okay, excellent. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept our qaleel efforts on Wednesday nights to better ourselves, to strengthen our community, strengthen our families, to understand there's power in numbers. Next Wednesday is our final session at 7 p.m. Eastern sharp. I'll look at the connection between helping ourselves and helping others. It's a very important discussion given the fact that anxiety, depression, all that is a huge phenomenon nowadays, which is, I think, affecting everybody. And finally, Allah, we ask you in the month of Rajab now, this beautiful month of worship, this fasl ibadat, that you accept our amal, forgive the sins of ourselves and our parents, and you allow us to stand beside the Imam when he comes. Thank you very much, everybody. Please be safe. We will see you, inshallah, next Wednesday. Wassalamu alaikum.